Okay, so thanks very much for joining us today. We're going to take a look at understanding and mastering the basics of GA. Now, GA is a really powerful tool. Fundamentally, it allows you to track what people are doing on your website. If you want to know what people are doing, what they're clicking on, and how they got there, this is the tool you want to be using. And being able to understand the basics will help you make recommendations with the numbers to back it up. So it's really about giving you the tools and confidence that you're making the right choices when it comes to your website, whether it's content production or further development requirements. So what we'll be covering today is some of the key reports and the key areas. We'll be looking at the audience tab, which is who is coming through to your website, things like demographics, whether they're new or returning. The acquisition tab, which is how they came through to your site, so things like paid search, organic, email, social, referral, and also the behavior report. So what are people interested or not in, and what they're doing when they come through to your site. Are they spending long enough on there? Are they just bouncing off straight away? We'll be looking at a couple of key reports underneath each of these, but the idea is that we're going to point you in the direction of some of the settings you need to apply to these, which is going to give you a good toolbox that you can go back to time and time again so that you know what numbers you're reporting on, where they're coming from. And we'll also be showing you ways you can streamline it and make it easier for yourself by saving reports down or creating dashboards that you can go back to very, very quickly. So once you've set up a report how you need it once, you've just got it there again. We're not going to be going through anything about the setup or the installation of GA. We can cover that separately if needed. And if you want to ask questions after this outside of the Q&A or chat box, feel free to get in touch with me via Steve or my email address after this, and we'll be happy to help wherever we can. Okay, so this is really basic. There's 3 views you see in GA as it stands at the minute. I am aware we pulled this deck together before GA announced the rollout of GA4. So we'll be doing a separate session on GA4 in the coming months. Keep an eye out for that one. But as it stands at the minute, current analytics is set up into accounts, properties, and views. Now, account level is necessary. You need one of these, even if you've got multiple websites to track. Property level allows you to manage multiple websites underneath an account. And then views is where you access the data and reports for the selected property or app. So if you've got a couple of brands underneath the parent brand is your account level 1, the individual brands are underneath the property, and then the views is set up underneath them. We'll come on to what we mean by master view and raw data view shortly on a couple of key things I always check. So as I mentioned, there's a couple of things that I always look at first and foremost whenever looking at a site's GA setup and before we do any reporting. One is site search. It's one of the most powerful but underrated tools you've got available for yourself. The next one is IP filtering, an important consideration, one that's not always used, and also goal setup and management. It's a fundamental way of proving the value of the website and any work or investment being done. So site search, what is it and why is it important? If you've got a search bar on your website, you can track what people are actually inputting into it. So one of the really annoying things with Google Analytics that you've probably come across if you've used it before is you'll often see something called not set. That's Google hiding keyword data from you of what users are actually searching for. Now, it's done for the right reasons. It's done because of privacy concerns and tracking. Get that? But if you've got a search bar on your site, you can actually register and report on what everyone's looking for on there. The other thing you can do, if you really want to see the organic keywords that people are searching for to get to your website, so on-site search is when they're on your site, but search is made to get there. You can do that through Google Search Console. I'm not going to go into that because this session is on GA, but if you would like more information on Search Console and how to see those keywords, ping us a message afterwards and we'll be happy to talk you through it. But site search itself is really easy to set up. So if you go into Google Analytics, you click on the little cog in the bottom left-hand corner, go to settings, site search settings, you can toggle it on. And the really easy way of finding out how your website handles search queries is to just run a search itself. And you'll typically see something in the URL bar that's got a question mark, and then it's got an S or Q usually, and then equal sign, and then I'll have the search phrase. You plug that into GA, give it about 24 hours, and it should start reporting for you. And this is where you'll go to find the data. So once you've set that up, you've given it about 24 hours, you go into your behavior column, go down to site search. You've got 4 separate reports here. Overview is going to tell you how many times a session had a search used in it. It'll be compared against the number of sessions which don't use search. Usage is the sessions and the behavior stats of those split again. Search terms is the list of terms that people are searching for. And search pages is the page on which the user made that search. Now, there's a couple of really key things here you can look at. So from a navigation perspective, if people are looking for a particular page, they've not been able to find it, and they're using the search box, that should indicate to you that you need to make a change to your navigation. Now, one thing I always say with web users, and I say it to every client I work with, is web users are dim. They're dumb, impatient, and methodical, so they can't find what they're looking for and they're having to search for it. Your website's not doing its job. The other thing to consider is just because the industry you work in, your business itself, your suppliers, or your suppliers use a particular phrase, doesn't mean your end users will do. One example is we worked with a bed retailer on a website a couple of years ago now, and they insisted that the navigation referred to bedsteads on the navigation. And what we actually saw was clicks to bedsteads was relatively low in the navigation, and people were actually using the search bar to find bed frames. Now, fundamentally there, what became apparent to them was, although their suppliers and internally they were using the phrase bedsteads in the navigation because it made sense to them, people actually using the site knew bed frames. But without having the data from the site search, we couldn't make that recommendation to them with the numbers to back it up. And because the number of searches for bed frames considerably outweighed the clicks bedsteads was getting, we had to improve the customer journey by changing that. The other thing you can use site search for is for improving content or product related issues. So are people looking for a particular product because they can't find it within the navigation? So it's not a case that you've got the taxonomy wrong, but it's just not listed there, or it's buried under various levels of filters. It might be because it's a low value product. It might be because it's deemed a low priority. But again, if people are searching for it consistently in the site search, you should be moving it up into the navigation. The ultimate aim of your website is to make the journey easier and smooth for people. So, great example here. We had a client who sold cashmere. They sold cashmere cardigans, jumpers, sweaters for the entire family. But what we saw month on month was that people were searching for cashmere scarves. Cashmere scarf, scarves, scarf. Scarf was about half of the site searches that were in the top 10 every month, and they were getting about 5K in revenue from people searching for that phrase. So we looked at that data over a 12-month period and saw it was consistently the case. There were a couple of peaks, and we'll come on to ways you can maximize that in a moment. But what we suggested was inputting scarves into the navigation underneath the accessory section. As a result, from the following month, the amount of revenue generated from scarves doubled from 5K to 10K, and that remained consistent over the following 6 months. Again, without having that site search data, we couldn't have made that change and been confident it was the right thing to do. The other thing it can do, though, is it can help you identify on-page issues. So if people are going to a particular page and then going into search and looking for things like contact or get in touch, there's obviously something on the page that's not answering the question they want answered. So you may look at them improving a pop-up on there to get in touch. You may have a form on there, or you may have an exit intent banner. But if you don't know where these people are having the issue, you don't know where to make those changes. So I talked before about the scarves issue and our cashmere clients. Now, when you've got the data from Google Anayltics site search, you can combine that data with Google Trends. It's another Google tool, but it's a match made in heaven when you combine both sets of data here. So you're finding out what people are interested in on your site, what they're searching for. You then put that information into Google Trends. You can look over a 5-year period, a 12-month period, 3 months, and see when user interest in that search phrase is strongest. And Google Trends looks a little bit like this. I've just put a dummy one in here for eating healthy. And unsurprisingly, in January, you can see here there were 2 peaks. January, everyone's looking to be healthier, everyone's looking to get in shape. But there's also a couple of other stronger peaks throughout the year. And what you can do is you can build out campaigns based on this. So if you know people are searching for specific content or products on your site, you combine this with the data and insight you can get from Google Trends. You can actually say, right, around these periods of time, we want to put more emphasis on this product, this category, or this information on site. We might do an email, we might do PPC, we might put more blogs out, anything that's going to try and capitalize on this. You've then got a lot of information to build out that campaign with numbers that you can justify investing in. One thing I would say is always double check the country you've got selected. Defaults to USA. You can toggle between web search, YouTube, and Google Shopping as well if you want to. You do want a bit of a hand with how to combine site search data and Google Trends data. Ping us a message. It's clever stuff, and it is one that I would use frequently if you can. Now, IP filtering is another one to consider. We report on usage stats from the website frequently for all of our clients, as well as our own website. The other thing we don't want to be doing is reporting on ourselves. So if you've got your office or offices, you've got suppliers and partners who use your website a lot, they're not necessarily going to be reflective of the audience you want to be reporting on. They could skew your data. So if I was looking at a client's website to rewrite meta across the site, I would be spending hours on various pages of the site, and that's going to overinflate the amount of time spent on page and the reporting that happens. It's not what you want to do because you're not getting a true reflection. What you can do is in the settings, you go to the admin cog again, go down to account and go to filters. You can filter out specific IP addresses. So you can filter out your office, suppliers, partners. We've done it before. The one caveat I would say here is we're obviously in the middle of a pandemic. People are generally working from home, and inputting everyone's home IP address isn't always going to be realistic. If you want to do it and there's only a small team of you, that's absolutely fine. Word of caution, filters are destructive. So when you apply one, that's it, your data starts skewing. So if you remember right at the start when we were talking about the account properties and view level, you saw references to master and raw view. Always keep a view of your website where you've applied no filters or changes to it. Create a new view and apply filters to that one. So what we tend to do is we create a raw or master view, we call it that, and then we create another view which we call IP filters. And then we block out all of the various IP addresses we don't want to report on. It'll be ourselves, clients, it'll be partners and suppliers, or people who test the website. And there's a really easy way to find out your IP address. Just Google what's my IP address and it'll tell you, and it'll look something like that. Okay, so goals. Goals is the one we always look at before we go into any reporting, and it's a way of measuring how effective your website is in meeting business objectives. So it could be a quote start, it could be purchase, or it could be the completion of a lead generation form. It's all going to depend on what sector you're in and what your business goals are. You could also use it for things like downloading gated content or submitting a contact us form, but always think of a goal as is the business KPI. What is the website doing to help the business meet its overall goals? Again, this is where you go to set it up. Go down to your cog, go down to view, go into goals, and you can add goals here. A couple of things to remember here. They aren't retroactive, so they will only start tracking once you've set them up. You can't look backwards. They can't be deleted either, but they can be stopped and edited. So you can set them up, do as many as you want, up to 20, and then you need to turn them off or edit the existing ones. Can't do any more than that. It's pretty clear with how you set them up. You click on new goal and it will take you through the process. All I would say is be very clear with what you want to track as your business KPI. Now this is an insurer example. And we've got two goals here. One is starting the quote journey and one is policy purchase. And you might think, why have we split it like that? Why wouldn't you just do anyone who's taken out a policy? You could do that, but what we wanted to do with this is say, right, how many people are starting the quote journey and then how many people are actually getting to the end? That gap in the middle is where you can then focus your attention. What's actually causing that drop-off rate? Is it price presentation? Are people losing interest once they get given the price? Is there a problem with the form itself? Is it limited to browser or device type? But without having those two goals, we can't see what that difference is and then make any valid recommendations off the back of it. So be really clear, be really concise, singularly focused with what you want your goal to be. So there you go, 3 key settings. Very quick summary. Site search, really powerful. It'll give you insight into what people are actually searching for on your site. You can then change content, you can change navigation, you can make improvements. IP filtering, you can be more confident in the data you're reporting, and goals will make it easier to prove the value of the website in hitting business KPIs. So straight into the GA dashboard. When you log in, you'll be presented with an at-a-glance view of the site, and this is just performance in a snapshot view over the last 7 days. It'll just give you a quick up or down view as to what it's doing and things are in positive or negative. To me, 7 days isn't really a valuable time frame to look at from this, and I don't spend too long on this dashboard view itself. But the one good thing you can use is Google's own AI-powered insights. Now, a lot of people don't tend to use this. It is available, and I would always start here if you're not really sure where to begin. If you don't know what's been going on or you don't know what you can say in a team update meeting about the site, take a look here. Click on Insights in the top right. You get some analytics intelligence, and it's going to give you a couple of key pointers of what Google's seen from your data. It's not going to be incredibly in-depth and you'll need to do a little bit of work afterwards, but it's going to point you in the right direction. So things like if you've got fewer users to the sites, if specific campaigns are performing much better than they were doing, or if there's a page that's got a particularly low speed. Right? These are all great starting points if you're not sure where to go, or you're just looking for something you can focus on for the upcoming month. Okay, so the key thing you're going to have and where you'll start outside of Insights is this bar on the left. So you've got your home page, which is your at-a-glance view. Customization, we'll come on to later. That's going to be where you find your saved reports and your dashboards. And then you've got real-time, audience, acquisition, behavior, and conversions. Real-time is, there's a clue in the name there, is a real-time view of the stats of your site. Audience is who's coming to your site. Acquisition is how they got there. And behavior is what they're interested in when they get there. Conversion is going to be dependent on what your goals are for the site. So we won't be going into those because there's a great deal of variance as to whether you're an e-commerce site versus non-e-commerce site and you're using the website for lead gen. So real-time reporting allows you to see activity as it happens. There's a great clue in the name there. But the other thing you can really use this for is if you've got a email campaign that's just launched or a social campaign, you can then go into the real-time report and see how that's working. You can monitor how many people are coming through off the back of it. You can see whether it's driving the right traffic you expect. And you can get a feel for whether it's sent out at the right time and you're getting those key stats. The other thing you can do with this real-time view is if you use Google Tag Manager to set up custom events and tracking, you can then see whether the event fires in the real-time view. And it will give you that confidence that you've set up tracking Tag Manager completely. We're not going to go into Tag Manager today. That's a separate discussion, but you can use real time for seeing how campaigns perform and also whether you've got your tracking and tagging set up in Tag Manager correctly. Now, the options you get in your real-time reports are location, so the geographic location, the language, city. Content is the pages viewed in the past 30 minutes, and conversions measured as a goal. The other two you get is traffic sources, so that's the medium and sources referring users to your website, and events. We'll take a look at traffic sources. Now, traffic sources, medium and source, can often get a little bit muddly and they're not completely clear. So I've tried to put it in a clear understanding here. Medium is a grouping of sources. So think of it as a menu in a cafe. You'll have things like CPC, display, email, or social. And that's the same as espresso, coffee, tea, in this example. And then your source is your way to differentiate within each medium. So think of it as the drinks underneath each menu header. So that would be espresso, Americano, macchiato, cortado underneath espresso. So CPC, display, email, and social are your medium. Google, Bing, Yahoo, GDN, Criteo, Quantcast, they're all the sources that fit underneath one of those mediums. You can have multiple sources in each, and this is just a real easy way of remembering the difference. It's also a great one to have in your back pocket if you ever get asked what source and medium are. Now, events. Events are a way of measuring how people interact with your site. So I mentioned before about setting up goals and being very clear that they're business KPIs. An event is different from a goal in that an event measures how people interact when they're on your site. So you could have things like pressing a video play button, downloading a PDF, or how far you're scrolling. You might be thinking, are events the same as goals? No, they're not. Goals are your business KPIs. I've gone on about it already, but keep that in mind. Events are the micro interactions people make throughout your site that play a part in the user journey. They can be recorded multiple times over a session, but they're not ultimately going to deliver those goal numbers. So keep that in mind. You can set a event up for any interaction. The one I use quite commonly, as well as download, scroll depth, and downloading videos, is navigation clicks. So I like to analyze how people are clicking, or how many people are clicking on various links within a drop-down navigation, for instance. And I can set that up as an event. I can track that, and I can then make recommendations to the client as to what order things should be moved around in, or if things need to be moved up or moved down. And if you combine that with site search data, you then build out a navigation that's much more user-friendly and gets people to where they want to go to as quickly as possible. There you go. That's a quick summary of the real-time reports. It's a good place to go when you've launched a campaign or you've set some tracking up in Tag Manager. The real-time reports are going to be triggered within the past 5 minutes, whereas standard reports can take up to 30 minutes. So it'll help you see the traffic and source if it's available. If you've set something live on social media or an email, or you've just launched a big campaign, dip into it. When we work in the office, we tend to have the real-time reports up on a couple of screens for our key sites, dominantly on PPC, just to see how the site's performing and where the traffic's going and coming from. So the audience report. Audience report tells you where people, or about the people coming through to your website. It's things like the demographics, language, country, as well as whether they're new or returning and the devices they use to get there. This is probably one of the reports with the most options in it, and we're not going to go through all of them. I'm going to go through some of the key ones that we tend to look at and the ones we always recommend to our clients as well. A couple of things here you can look at: active users, demographics, covered, mobile, so that's user data by device type, behavior, new and returning, and then interests. We're going to look at behavior, interests, and mobile data. So in the audience report, if you scroll down to behavior and then go to new versus returning, what you'll see is 2 lines, one for new visitors. So this is people who've not been through to your website, and one for returning visitors. And it will give you some stats as to how many people you've got there. And it will also go into behavior stats. The other thing you can do is create a secondary dimension. The secondary dimension is just here. And you can specify various different secondary dimensions, but what you can see is I put in a secondary dimension of landing page, and now I can see for my new visitors what pages most people are landing on the site. What this tells me is people who are new to the site, this is the content they're most interested in. If I know that data, I can put things on that page or that journey to either get them to go back through to more pages on the site. I could put email signups, I could put data capture forms, I could put lead generation forms, or I could look at expanding that content out further. So in this example, the camera lens guide, that would indicate to me that people are interested in guide type content, and I could look at producing more content like that. So your primary dimension is always in the leftmost column. It's user type, new or returning. Secondary dimension in this example is landing page. Really easy to set up and it's really easy to turn off. There's just an X there and it will get rid of it and put you back to your existing view. All this will help you do is ensure you're putting the focus in the right places. I've talked there about new visitors and the content that's driving them. You can also look at existing users. So if you've got existing users going through to different types of content, you might want to replicate that sort of content for use in your email newsletters. Your existing database, you might want to make sure that you keep them engaged on your site more. The more reasons you get them coming back onto the site, better. Now, interest data, this is based on user browsing habits. So it's split into 3 categories. One is affinity audiences, so they're general topics. Could be coffee. For me, it's usually coffee. In-market audience is behavior that suggests a person is about to convert. So in this example, it would be looking for a coffee shop. I'm indicating I want to buy a coffee. And then other is a granular view of my affinity audience interest, which is coffee. So this example would be cortado. These are going to be general interest based on browsing habits from everywhere where the tracking cookies are enabled. So it's not going to be specific to your industry completely, but what you might see is some general themes, and you could take these with a pinch of salt, but it's going to point you in the right direction. So if you're a residential property surveying company, for instance, or you hire out equipment like that, and you see in these interests that there's an interest in real estate, DIY, property surveying, residential properties, that would make sense. It's relevant to your audience. And what you can do with those is you can take some of those audiences and create a Google News alert. And you plug each one of those in, and then Google will ping you an email address with the latest articles in its news network. Find those articles that you think have some value, and then you can newsjack them. And by newsjack, I mean you embed it onto your own blog, include the source link to where it's come from, and you top and tail it with your own bit of copy to thought this was a really interesting piece of news for our audience or our readers, subscribers, and then you put your own spin on it at the end. It's a real quick way of making sure you've got this evergreen BAU content on your blog that you know is going to be aligned to what your audience is interested in. It doesn't take too long to do, and it's a real quick way of boosting blog content. Okay, so in the mobile report, you can see the core metrics we looked at in the other views in device category. So you've got mobile, desktop, and tablet. A little bit of warning here with tablet and mobile. The lines blur between mobile and tablet as more websites get more responsive and screen sizes get bigger on phones. You can also look by individual device type. So on the left, you've got the overview tab and you've got the devices report. Again, I'm going to mention here you can apply a secondary dimension really easily, as in the same way as before, but you can then see which device types are sending through most users and which pages they're landing on. So if I was to add a secondary dimension to mobile and view what landing pages, and I could see that the bounce rate was high as it is there, I could then do some further investigatory work and see what was causing that issue. You could use a tool like Hotjar for that. It's free, and you can see if there's any issues on page. So there we go. There's a whistle-stop tour. Think of it a bit like a flow. So the audience is the beginning point. It's who's coming through to your website. You can get a better understanding as to whether they're new or returning and what content they're most interested in. You can look at what device types is driving the most traffic through. You could use that data to then inform your PPC spend, or you could use it to identify if there are any issues with page load time or people are struggling to view the site on mobile. And you can also look at overall interests. Interests, again, quite generalized. It'll be based on all browsing habits, and with people working from home, I'm pretty sure most people are using their work devices to look at BBC News and Guardian and other things in between various bits of work, or in Steve's case, YouTube for his son, Holly. but it will help you prioritize content and pages. So in audience, we were looking at who was coming to your site. The next report along is the acquisition report. And this is a measure of performance in various channels coming through to your website. It's looking at how they got there. Is it paid search? Is it organic? It will also allow you to look at various source mediums. I would say probably look at these over a longer period, either a month, quarter, 6 months, or a year. That will allow you to spot trends much more easily than a typical 7-day period. And these are the default channel groupings. So most of these should make sense, but I'll just run through them anyway. Organic search is traffic from search engines, including Google, no surprise there, Yahoo and Bing. You can consider any organic traffic as an earned visit. So a user decided to click on your website based on your appearance in the search results page. You've not paid for it. So the work you've done, work you've invested, you've earned that visit. Direct is a slightly tricky one. It usually means someone who's accessed your site by entering the URL or by clicking on your site from a bookmark. It can also be a bit of a dumping ground. If Google Analytics can't accurately identify the correct channel to go in, it'll tend to get dumped in direct. And the most common one for this is referral traffic. So if you've got a partner or an affiliate who's not set up a referral link to your website correctly, that traffic could get dumped into direct and it'll make it much more difficult for you to track how that referring partner is performing. Social is Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or LinkedIn, or any other social media network. Referral, we touched on before. This should be a partner or a website with a directory or affiliates. Providing they're set up correctly, they'll appear in the referral tab. Email, clues in the name, it's from any email. And paid search. So unlike organic where you earn the click, on paid search, you're bidding for specific keywords to target user queries in the hopes of winning that click from competitors. It'll be things like Google ads and Bing ads. Okay, so if you are in the acquisition report and you go to all traffic and channels, you will see default channel grouping down here, and it lists the organic, the direct, and the paid search. There's a couple of other things in there as well, but what we tend to look at is you can compare how your organic search is varying against your paid search. And it also looks at a couple of key behavior stats. So the 3 here are bounce rate. Bounce is a single page session. So someone's landed on your website, they've only viewed the one page they landed on, and then they've left. That's a bounce. Pages per session is how many pages they viewed on average in a session. And session duration is total duration of sessions divided by the number of sessions. It tells you roughly how long people have been spending on their session. The other thing you can do with this is apply a longer date range really easily at the top. Click the drop down, you get the date picker. We tend to look at month-on-month comparisons and also year-on-year comparisons and year-to-date. They're pretty key things to do. You can also apply secondary dimensions, but when you select a date range and you compare it, you get 2 lines here and you can see whenever there are peaks. What you might want to do is if you see that consistently getting peaks in people coming through on a weekend, you might want to increase your spend on PPC, or you might want to look at doing social campaigns to further increase that. Again, you've got default channel groupings here. So we talked about primary dimensions when we were looking at new versus returning users. We've talked about secondary dimensions. But in primary dimensions for channels, you've got default channel grouping, which is your organic, your paid, or direct, your referral, and social media. You've also got the option for source medium. Remember the difference there? Coffee, cortado, latte, and source on its own or medium on its own. I wouldn't really recommend switching the primary dimension to source medium. You've got a report for source medium here on the left already. So if you're doing it through the channels, you may as well just do it through the default group there. You can select from other primary dimensions as well, but I think you'd pretty much be okay with the default channel grouping, providing you understand what those different groupings mean and what traffic is. If you do see something like direct traffic as a huge spike and referral traffic dives off, you know there's an issue there. The other thing you've got in this view is up here in the Explorer area. So your summary view we looked at before. Site usage is a little bit different. Site usage gives you a more streamlined view on your performance, and it takes out the goals. You see here, like I've clicked on site usage. I've now got my users, sessions, page of session, session duration, percentage new, and bounce rate. Whereas before, I also have the conversion data in there. Conversion data is not always going to be relevant if you don't have goals set up on your site. Not every website will. But if I just want to see these key stats, that's where I would go. Change it to site usage. Those are the key ones I want to see. Now, you can save a report. This is quite a handy thing. So if I've compared date range, I've changed site usage, and I've applied a secondary dimension to this. So I've applied a couple of different filters to the data I want to see on a frequent basis. I can click save, and that configuration of the report will appear in the customization tab on the left. All you need to do, give the report a name, and then you go into customization, and those configuration settings will be saved there for you. You don't have to go all the way back through all traffic channels, site usage, apply the various date ranges, apply a secondary dimension. It will all save it there for you without changing any of this key stats. Because if you go back into all traffic channels coming out of analytics, it'll be gone. But it's really handy if you want to go back to that configuration you set up, save your report as you found it most useful, put it in there. Okay, the other one in acquisition that can be really useful for you is the campaign view. So it's a great report to use if you do a lot of email or social media activity. You'll also find your PPC performance campaigns in here as well if you've got your analytics linked up with your ads. If you want to track your email and social media activity, use UTM links. And a real easy way of doing that is with this link here. So you input your website URL or landing page URL on this link from Google, and you can specify your campaign, your medium, and your source, and it'll give you the link for the tracking. You use that in your email or your social media posts, that'll then appear in analytics in the campaign view for you. You can filter campaigns really easily as well. So up here, you've got your search box and you've got advanced. Click on advanced. What will happen is it will drop down this new option here for you where you can include or exclude campaign source or medium containing specific words. So if I wanted to just see the performance of a newsletter campaign over the past year, I would just type in their newsletter if that's what I've called the campaign. And then all it will do is it'll filter out all that data for you and just give you the newsletter performance. If you want, you can apply a secondary dimension again, but you're stacking up multiple layers here. So this is maybe where you want to save a report. You're doing a lot of filtering, applying data to it. But it's going to give you a really good insight here. So taking the example of newsletter, I can then see how many sessions are being generated from newsletters and what the behavior stats are for those people who come through. So there you go. Acquisition reports helps you understand how users are coming through to your site. Channel source and mediums, key to look over them over a longer term. And you can use the campaign tab for specific campaigns, things like newsletter or Friday, Cyber Monday. So you could look at all those individually. Again, source and medium are easily muddled. You can have multiple sources though underneath the medium. So coffee is your medium, types of coffee is your source. Now the behavior report, this is understanding what users are doing on your site. So audience is who they are, acquisition is where they've come from, behavior is what they do. So it helps you understand what they're doing when they get there. You can see the amount of page views you're getting for the site over a given time frame. You can compare date ranges in here. There is a report here called Behaviour Flow, and it'll help you understand where people are landing and where they're going to next. And it looks a little bit messy, it looks a bit like this, but you can see here that if people are landing on, in this example, camera lens guide, people are clicking further in, and then these red lines are how many people are dropping off or where they're going to afterwards. So in this example, they're going to the home page, and from the home page, they're going on to the quote journey. If you understand where people are starting from and where they're going afterwards and where the drop-off points are, Behaviour Flow is a good one to do. It is messy, can look a little confusing, but if you right-click on the landing page, you can isolate just that view. You can also increase or decrease the level of detail and the amount of interactions being taken. Now, underneath site content, there are two ones we always look at. One is all pages, the other one is landing pages. There's two very distinct reasons we look at these. All pages are metrics of a page that a user visits at any point within their session. So it could be the first page they land on, it could be the third, fourth, fifth page. Landing page is the first page where a session starts. So think of your landing pages as this is the entry point where people are coming in. All pages gives you the stats for a page's performance anywhere within the session or the user's journey. So there's a couple of stats or a couple of reporting metrics here: page views, unique page views, time on page, entrances, bounce rate, exit and page value. They're different than what we were looking at in the acquisition tab. So I won't run through all of these, but we'll make sure you've got these here. It's just the definition of what they mean. Now, landing pages, as I said, is the entrance where people are starting their session on the site. We've talked about some of these beforehand, so your acquisition stats and your behavior stats and the conversions. You can then look at which pages have got high bounce rate, and it will give you an idea as to what you want to do to improve it. So in this example, camera lens guide has a high bounce rate. So what we might want to do is include a pop-up or links through to the quote journey or further links throughout the site. The idea is that you want to keep people on your site. Give them more links, more internal linking. Google also likes internal linking as well. The one thing I would say is that whenever we recommend this to clients is sometimes they just think adding a hyperlink is sufficient in order to get it on there. It might not cut it. You might need to add buttons, banners, or pop-ups. Remember, web users are dumb, impatient, and methodical. So you need to make it really obvious when they land on your website or on a landing page what you want them to do. If you landed them on a page and you want them to get a quote, do a big button, do a big banner. If you want them to fill in a form, make it easy and obvious to see. Covered this before, landing pages and all pages aren't the same. Landing pages are the place where people enter your website. That's the start of the session. All pages is a report of evergreen reporting. So that page could have been viewed in any point in the session and any point in the journey. Site speed is another one we look at from behavior. It's a crucial one to look at, but most of these probably won't mean much to you. Some should be pretty obvious. Server connection, how long it takes a user to access your site when they're clicking on it, how long it takes to connect. Page download is how long it takes a page to download. But the one you want to look at most is average page load time. So this is whether there are certain pages that always take longer to load for users. It could be there's a trend on particular days. It could be that there's a certain page that always takes longer than it should. And if you can isolate what those pages or what those days are, you can then pick it up with your dev team or your agency, and they can investigate it further. You could use Google Lighthouse, for instance. There's a particular page. What I would recommend doing is if there is blips and they're on similar days or it's certain pages, keep a log of when it was, and you'll be able to spot any patterns pretty easily. Now, events. Underneath behavior, you'll find events. Remember, those are micro interactions that users make on your website that you want to track and measure. They're not business KPIs, but these are various clicks people are making on your site or various scroll depths they're getting to. So this is an example of one that I mentioned before. I like to measure navigation clicks as an event. What it means is that if there are various links here that are getting more clicks than others, I would reprioritize them in the navigation dropdown. But without having that actual user data, it's difficult to make those recommendations. So think about what you want to track with an event, whether it's downloads or whether it's something like navigation. Measure it over a certain period, and then you can use that to make recommendations on ways to improve your site or improve the content. That's a quick summary tour there for behavior reports. These will really help you understand what users are doing on your site, and you can do a lot of customization here with how you measure and how you make recommendations to improve things further. It can be quite overwhelming and you can get quite a few layers deep. But if you've set up one that reports that is filtered, you've applied advanced filtering, you've applied a secondary dimension and a date comparison, save it. Call it something that's really obvious, and then you've got a way to go back to it really quickly without needing to set it all up from scratch. And if someone asks you for that comparison data again, you can just go into it in 1 or 2 clicks rather than having to go through 4 or 5 and checking you've configured your reporting setup in the right way. Okay, so we touched on save reports, but there's also dashboards. I mentioned here, once you've filtered and refined a report in audience acquisition or behavior, you may want to return to it to get things quicker. It's about working smarter, not harder. Talked about clicking the save option, that's saving the reports, and then it'll appear in your customization tab in save reports. Really easy. It should save you a lot of time. You may have to do it, spend a bit of time up front creating those save reports for yourself, but I can guarantee it'll save you time in the long run. Now with dashboards in the customization tab, you can use a starter dashboard or you can create a blank canvas. I tend to go with blank canvas, generally as a start, and what you'll see is something that looks like this. And what it's asking you to do is add a widget to your site. These shouldn't be too surprising for you, but you can then see standard metrics. So your 2.1 metric is just the core numbers over a date range you specify. Timeline will give you a graph over a number of days that you specify. Geomap is a map with the data set and the metric that you specify. Table is a data table with multiple columns in. Pie chart is useful if you're showing something like a channel mix. So if you want to compare how organic and paid search traffic is split, you could specify those there. And then a bar chart. Nothing fancy, but you could pick out bounce rate for a set number of pages. There is more we can look at with dashboards, and we can go through those in more detail and separately if you want to. There's no limit to how many dashboards you can have, but you can only have 12 widgets on them. So think about it, each one of those blocks you put in, one of these, bar chart, pie, table, geo, timeline, or metric, you can only have 12 of them per dashboard. So think very carefully what you want to do. You might have to create multiple to get all of the data you want. The thing you can also do is you can set them up to export as PDFs, as Excel sheets, and you can also set them up to email automatically on a daily, weekly, monthly, or annual basis. So if there's a number of core stats that you need every week to report on for how your site's performing, you could do that. You could set it up, you could have it emailed to yourself or to your team, those core numbers, and it'll come through on a day you specify. We do that with a couple of clients for our teams internally so that we've got the numbers there when we do our reporting. It's just sat in the inbox already without us having to go in and fiddle around in the analytics. One thing I would say with that is if you set up the email reporting, the time at which Google sends it out varies wildly. It could be 10 a.m., 11 a.m., or it could be 10 o'clock at night. This one's a bit of a bonus tip for you. So I know sometimes we get asked this by clients whether we can snip out some of the graphs or charts that we see in analytics. You can screenshot. It's a little bit of a pain. If you use Firefox, Firefox has a built-in screenshot taker, but you need to right-click in this area at the top. And I'll give you this option to take screenshot, and then you can select the area there. Try and do it anywhere else on the page. It won't always come up with the option. I think Google's picked up on people trying to do that. And the reason I mention this is if you can't install various plugins, there is a plugin you can use called Fireshot, which allows you to do it here, down here at the bottom. You might not be able to do that. Your company settings might not allow. So if you use Firefox, you can do it natively without having to do print screen and make it fiddly for yourself. Taking a screenshot direct without cropping it in might just save you a bit of time and energy. That's it. That's it from me. It's a whistle-stop tour. This session will be available.
Thank you, Chris. Really enjoyed that. Thank you very much, mate. I was let a few people ask their questions. I think we've got a couple already in in the inbox. So I'll just quickly remind people that we have a further 4 masterclasses forthcoming in this series every Wednesday for the next 4 weeks. Ultimately, I'll send you a link if you haven't already subscribed to those masterclasses. I know several of you are coming to more than just today's session. So Chris, I'm going to quickly just jump into the question and answers. So we have an answer from Catherine. If the website is a B2B or B2B, B2C website, what would you set up as a goal if they can't purchase on your site? What would you recommend, Chris?
So for something like that, it would be a lead generation form. So if they can't purchase, you might want to have them give you their contact details. So if it's going through to a sales team, there'll be a form that they have to fill in. That will be the goal I'd set up, because at that point, the website's done its job. It's gone into that team. It's that team's responsibility. The job of the website there will be to just capture that data and get it through to the team. The other things you could do is you could measure the goal of people clicking through on a phone number. So if you want them to call you directly or request a callback, that'll be another way of doing it.
I was wondering, Chris, another potential goal could potentially be the length of time the person's been on the site.
Yes.
Because often that's an indicator that it's a potentially good customer. It's someone who's very interested in your product or indeed service. And potentially even the number of pages that that person might have visited also might well be a goal. Catherine, if you would like any further information about, it's obviously quite a specific question, that if you would like to maybe bend Chris's ear, his contact details will be on the email that I send out later on today. Okay, so any further questions? No questions as such. I did double check the chat box.
So yeah, there's a from Stephen on GA4.
Stephen is more of a
recently there's a new version of GA that's rolled out, GA4, which handles how analytics not only looks but also how it reports data. So we'll be doing another session on GA4. GA4 measures a lot more interactions as events. So there's an increased focus on events, and that includes page views.
That's fine. Just a couple of comments here from John Bristow. Yes, we'll be sending the slides over in due course. They'll either be over later or tomorrow morning, along with the video as well, a recording of the video. But yes, I will submit the slides. Also, a question from John, Chris. John is asking, can you use GA to measure activity on someone else's site?
No. Basically, when GA sets up, you have to input tracking code onto your website, and you can only view the website data of where you've got the tracking code installed. We can't, or no one can install tracking code on a competitor's website. There are other tools you can use from a SEO perspective. So you could look at something like SEMrush or SEO Moz. You want to see how competitors' websites are performing organically.
I guess even if the obviously as an agency we have access to lots of sites, but obviously we've been given access to those sites. Don't know exactly where you're from, John, but no, unfortunately you can't. John's asked another question here. No, you can't buy access, unfortunately.
I can guarantee that competitors and websites won't want to freely give out their website performance or have that data visible.
That's correct. Okay, let me just go back to question and answers. A couple of sessions here. You've dealt with Stephen Downs' question, haven't you, Chris?
Yeah, I think we can pick that one up either separately if you want more, or we'll just ping you a message when we do a session on GA4 itself.
Okay, there's a question here from Angus, Chris. Many thanks, very helpful. My question is the definition of new user, first-time users within the time period set.
You can vary the time period set. So new user will be someone who hasn't visited the website before, or someone who's cleared their data. Now, the other is if you use Safari or an Apple device, Apple have recently made a lot of security changes to third-party tracking code, and GA code by default is also disabled. So you may start seeing numbers there drop off, or they may also always appear as a new user or first-time user. You can specify the time period as much as you want. It'll be whenever they delete that cookie or clear their browsing data that they reset as a new user, first-time user.
Okay, Chris, I think, oh, another one's come in. Bear with me, or might be a, thank you. Bear with me. Yes. Angus says thank you, Chris. Okay, so without further ado, I think I'll close today's session. So thank you very much for attending today's session. Today's was the most, our biggest attendance thus far throughout the series. So well done, Chris. Obviously a topic that's hot on the agenda of many people. As we mentioned, Chris is likely to do another session on Google Analytics later on in the year. We'll let you know when that has been scheduled. I will be sending out an email within the next 24 hours with a link to the presentation, as well as a link through to Chris, the recording from today, as well as an opportunity to sign up to other forthcoming masterclasses that we have scheduled over the next 4 weeks or so. So again, thank you very much for your attendance, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining. Bye.